Hello, everyone. Still in Judges here for today. We're going to be going through, picking back up in chapter 14 where we left off yesterday, and we will see if we make it through chapter 17. But that's the goal. And I haven't said this in a while, but if you're joining in, we are going through a chronological study Bible, so the books are ordered chronologically instead of canonically. And if you need this Bible, I will gladly send you a copy so that you can follow along in our studies as we go from Genesis to Revelation. And the email address is because love never fails at gmail.com. And all I need is your physical address, and I will send you a copy of the Bible. So I do encourage you to study along. It's again, the context is who is the God of the Bible? Old Testament, New Testament. How it all links together, ultimately revealing Christ as Lord. So in 14, when we left off yesterday, um, let's see here, we had left off with Samson and talking about the Spirit of the Lord that had come upon him, and then also how in that he didn't tell his mother and father um, about. So the Spirit of the Lord came upon him with this young lion. So this lion had come up against him, and he was able to defeat the lion. And then picking up in verse 7, and in verse 7 it says, "Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well." So this was Timnah. So it looks like there was some passage of time here between verses 6 and 7, and the so with this transition in time, this to reference back to get some context here is Samson had gone down to Timnah, had seen a Philistine lady that he was in that he basically wanted to marry, and had solicited his mom and dad, saying, "Hey, I want this lady. Let's go down and I want to marry her." Uh, so they're gone down, and another thing that points to a passage of time here is as he and his parents are going back down to Timnah, the carcass of the lion that he'd killed, there was honey in the lion, and so he had gathered the honey, and as they're walking along, he'd given some to his mother and father, but again he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there for for young men used to do so. And it happened when they saw him that they brought 30 companions to be with him. Then Samson said to them, "Let me pose a riddle to you. If you can correctly solve and explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing." And they said to him, "Pose your riddle that we may hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." And it says, "Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the seventh day that they said to Samson's wife, 'Entice your husband, that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is that not so?'" A few things going on here. One is that these 30 companions, and so these would be Philistines, right? So here's Samson. He's hanging out with 30 companions that are assigned to him. These 30 Philistines, and also there's this, we're talking Israelites and Philistines here. So there's certainly a tension here, and then even Samson posing this riddle. And during this time period, riddles were a big deal. The riddles were used in such a way that even in some cases that could mean life or death if a person couldn't answer a riddle. And and then two, in reading here in this section, we see that the Philistines were very, very serious in finding out the answer to this riddle, even to the point of we read that for 3 days they could not explain the riddle, and here these 30 guys hanging out, really no kidding, trying to find the answer to this riddle, and they can't. And so the lady who's to be Samson's wife, they even come to her and they're asking her to entice him, and and to the point of 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 saying, if you can't get the answer to him from him for this riddle, we will burn you and your father's house with fire. So a big deal. And let's see. Also with the garments, these 30 linen garments, um, the linen garments. I mean, these are nice. These are nice outfits. This would probably compare to like a three-piece suit today, as far as giving as a gift. So imagine Samson giving 30 men, these fine three-piece suits. All right. So Samson's wife uh, wept on him and said, "You only hate me. You do not love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me." And he's telling her, "Look, I've not even explained it to my father or mother, so should I explain it to you?" And so for 7 days, again, pointing to the seriousness of wanting to figure out this riddle, for 7 days while the feast lasted, she's weeping and and trying to get the answer of the riddle to him from him. And so he finally gave it. And they answer him the riddle, but also posing it back to him as a question. And they say, "What is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion?" And he says back to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." And this is an interesting play on words here, because what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? Well, there is an answer to that: an enticing woman, especially within Samson's life. Right here already, he's being enticed by a woman. We're going to see here in just a few chapters where he comes in contact with Delilah, which is ultimately going to be the end of him. So what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? An enticing woman. And he said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. If you had not meddled with my wife, if you had not meddled in the affair here, then you wouldn't have solved the riddle." And then verse 19, "Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave the changes of clothing to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man." Ashkelon would have been about 25 miles, a 25-mile walk from Timnah. Ashkelon was one of 5 major cities with the Philistines. And there were closer places that he could have gone, but for whatever reason, he goes to Ashkelon, and he kills these 30 men, takes their three-piece suits, their fine linen, and brings them back and fulfills on his word to the men who had solved the riddle. And it says his anger was aroused. Also here, with Samson's wife being given to his companion, it's given to him, during this time period as well. There's there were people to support the bride, because when in a marriage, it wasn't necessarily always instantly consummated, and then the bride and bridegroom, go off and be together. And so there was this support network. So this best man would have been part of that support. So with Samson being angry, and we see even in chapter 15, he left. So he's angry, he leaves, and so during this time period, this wife of Samson's was given to his companion, the best man, really as support. And then getting into chapter 15, it says, "After a while in the time of wheat harvest," so that would have been maybe like the end of May or so, he comes back to visit his wife with a young goat, and he says, "Let me go into my wife, into her room." But her father would not permit him to go in. And her father says to him, verse 2, "I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. Therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead." And Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them." And then he goes and he catches 300 foxes, and he takes these torches and ties them to the tails of these foxes, and they run through the village there, the city. And it says, "When he had set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. So he basically just wreaked havoc on this place, right? So there's standing grain, and there's also shocks. The shocks would have been the cut grain that would be laying and waiting to be threshed. So that's destroyed. The standing grain's destroyed. Even the vineyards and the olive groves were destroyed by these foxes, or some consider these foxes to be jackals, which is probably more the case. It can be translated as jackals as well, because catching 300 individual foxes might be a challenge, but catching jackals, who are pack animals, especially 300 of them, would be a far easier task. But nonetheless, the damage was done regardless. And then the Philistines said, Who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. So they were obviously upset. Vengeance was taken on them. And then they're even now seeking out Samson because they want to take revenge on him. And so, as such, the Philistines go up and they camp in Judah and deploy themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why have you come up against us? So they answered, We've come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam and said to Samson, Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us? And he says to them, As they did to me, so I have done to them. And there's this dialogue between those from Judah, the Israelites from Judah, and Samson. And Samson basically has them swear to him that they won't kill him. And they make this pact between each other. They tie up Samson with new ropes, and they bring him from the rock of Etam to the Philistines. And again, the Spirit of the Lord, verse 14, came mightily upon Samson, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds broke loose from his hands. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. And so it was, when he had finished speaking, that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called the place Ramath Lehi, which means jawbone height. Just with this vigor that Samson shows here, with the Spirit of the Lord coming upon him. We spoke yesterday about the Spirit of the Lord, and it visiting people here throughout the Old Testament and coming upon them. In Samson's case, there's this physicalness, right, that comes from the visiting of the Spirit of the Lord. When the Spirit of the Lord visits him, it's just he's incredibly strong and follows, and takes down all those in the vicinity. Whereas, like with Gideon and some others, when the Spirit of the Lord came upon them, or even Joshua, it's in this war setting, and more in terms of strategy, or in terms of tactics, in taking down a city or taking down a whole group of men. So it visits, and then it is manifesting itself differently in different men throughout the Old Testament. And then it says in verse 18, after taking down these men, he's thirsty. He's thinking he's literally going to die of thirst, and this is the way he's going to be delivered. And he says to the Lord, You have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant, and now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised. So God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out, and he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore he called its name En-Hakkore, which means spring of the caller. And he judged Israel 20 years in the day of the Philistines. The Israel people had been in subjection to the Philistines for 40 years, and now under Samson, it would be 20 years that they are under him. And then chapter 16 gets into Samson meeting Delilah, and we have 30 seconds left, so I won't start that now, but we will finish up tomorrow with Samson and with Delilah, and see how the story of Samson ends here. Okay, God bless you guys. Have a great day, and I will see you next time. Take care.